Kurtz, it's 3:00 and I think it's time to get started.
All right,
Are you ready?
we're in. I'm in. I'm excited to talk about this. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our, I wouldn't necessarily even call it a webinar, but our discussion about bringing the camp spirit to people's homes as we practice social distancing during COVID-19. It's my goal, and I think the collective goal of the leadership facilitators at the Summer Camp Society to help camp directors, camp leaders find ways to not just like entertain kids during this time when they're home from school or what have you, but also to build social, emotional connections between kids while they're at home. And we all are grappling with the question of whether or not camp will run this summer. If it does, what would that look like, et cetera. So we have to think about our short-term plans over the next couple of weeks, maybe months, and our long-term plans, and how can digital engagement roll into that. Something I feel really positive about is over the past 3 years, we have built communities of camp directors through Zoom, and I have made some very close friends through Zoom and have maintained relationships that way. So I feel like there is a lot of potential in terms of how we can build these connections. So I was hoping that we could just start. So I'm going to ask questions of the panel. So I'm not currently a camp director. I do camp consulting, training, professional development. Jack, Jason, and Anna do professional development, camp training, consulting. They also run camps. So I'm going to be interviewing them, kind of posing questions to the group. And so I was hoping each of you could start off with just like a brief synopsis of what your camp is, just what it's like for people who don't know you, and also kind of just a couple sentence explanation of where you're at with COVID-19, how it's impacting camp. And then let's talk about what you're doing in terms of virtual programming. So if we just do introductions of who you are, where you're at in terms of COVID-19 and camp, and then we'll do a second round of what you're doing in terms of virtual engagement for campers. Sound good? Okay, great. So Jack, why don't you start, and then you can choose whoever goes next after you.
Thanks, Kurtz. And I'm trying to keep up in the chat. I love chats during Zoom. I think it's super fun. It's like getting to pass notes during class, which I always did and got in trouble for. So it's kind of like that, but it's sanctioned in this situation. Yeah, Kurtz. So anyway, I run Camp Stomping Ground. We office out of Rochester, New York, sort of. Right now we're acquiring a property in Saratoga Springs and trying to also make it ready for this summer, which obviously is more interesting now than it was a few weeks ago. We jumped in pretty hard to running a form of virtual camp, and we're going to run about 6 or 7 hours of online interactive content a day next week. This week, I think it was 5, something like that. And I want to say before we get into virtual camp, we're going to talk about a lot of cool ideas. I think we can provide a really interesting resource to families that also this is like all the stuff that I'm thinking about right now is that's like about my camp and whether we can run camp, and I'm stressing about. I always have to remind myself is a big deal. It's very important. And the world is like actually in a crisis where there are people who are dying, who are very sick, and that all the stuff we're doing is important, mostly from one perspective for me, which is that it makes it easier for people to continue to quarantine, which is the #1 goal right now, so that we can reduce the negative impact of more people being sick in hospitals. So we are doing a lot of stuff to be engaged with families, to do all that kind of thing with a lot of secondary goals. But the first goal is to stay home, not make people go outside, those kind of things. So that's where we want to start. And I can't remember what else I was supposed to say, Kurtz, but if you don't know what Camp Stomping Ground is, you can look us up, and I bet some of you do because me and Kurtz are putting this webinar on. And I'm going to turn it over to Anna, who's below me on my screen.
Hey, everybody. I'm Anna. I'm the camp director at Friends Camp, which is a kind of small overnight nonprofit camp in central Maine. And we are a super small operation in the winter in that it's just me in my home. So it's not that weird for me to be working from home because I always work from home. It is weird to be here all the time, but it's something that I'm pretty used to. And right now with COVID-19, we are planning to run camp this summer, and we are also planning contingencies. I just had a meeting with our executive team on our board, which is about 4 of us, and kind of playing out the possibilities of full camp. What will that look like? What will need to change? Playing out the possibility of a half a season camp starting a month late, or no camp, and what could we do to support families, and what can we do to weather the storm financially. So we're kind of working on all that, and trying to be present for families right now and for staff right now. So I think in round 2, we'll talk about that and share more about what we're doing. But I'm like I said, super small operation. So I've had to balance kind of thinking about planning for 3 different possibilities this summer with also doing virtual camp. So if you're interested in some ideas that don't take that much energy from you as camp staff, then I might be your person. Jason?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Smith. I'm with YMCA Camp Kentucky, which is in Nebraska. We do 1-week summer camp programs. We have about 280 kids out a week over the course of 10 weeks of the summer, and also do outdoor education and retreats and stuff year round. And our, right now where we're at is our association has moved our staff team to kind of basically a half day working hours and stuff like that. So we're a little impacted as far as time in preparation for the summer, but we are at this point in time planning on running a summer camp program. We are preparing for different eventualities. I have a document going for summer camp happens as planned, or at least as the start date is planned and everything like that. Summer camp happens on a shortened time frame, and summer camp does not happen, and just a whole bunch of different bullets for each of those situations. So yeah, that's that. Kurt, do you want to set us up for the next thing?
Yeah, so we got a brief summary from Jack about what Stomping Ground is doing right now in terms of virtual programming. Jack, are there more details about that? I guess let's start with what Jack is doing. Jack, Anna, and Jason's camps all have very different approaches to virtual programming. So I guess I want to start with Hometown Stomping Ground. And Jack, I'd love to hear why y'all decided to go in that direction, what it is, and why you decided it was kind of like the best course of action in the short term for Stomping Ground.
Yeah, so the reason why I'm excited about Anna and Jason being here is that they have very different resources than we do, and have chosen to do different and similar in some ways things. We all steal from each other all the time. So the way that our virtual, we call it Hometown Stomping Ground, because at camp we have this place called Downtown Stomping Ground, and all the kids know that, so it's insider language. But the reason why we started it is actually because I saw that Jason and Nat and his team at Kentucky were starting Kentucky Worldwide, which I was like, that's cool. And then I read what they were doing, started making guesses about what they might do, and then did the guesses. I did what I thought he might do, and turns out it was nowhere near what he was going to do. But that's where we started with. And what we realized is we tried to put out a lot of videos that were recorded and a lot of written materials and do some interactive stuff. And what we found is that we couldn't produce enough recorded materials and written materials that were as good as what the rest of the internet was already doing. So unless it was very like camp specific, then it wasn't, for us, what we were able to do wasn't that special as compared to if we could create time where it was interactive between campers and staff. And so we leaned in, we did minimal the first week, and we're finishing week 2. we did minimal the first week of all of them. I think we did like one video, a little bit of written materials, and an hour or two a day of Zoom calls. And we realized that the Zoom calls were much more impactful for our kids. So we doubled down on that, and we'll be running both daily options and week-long options of Zoom meetings. And then we built a quick website to make it easier and seem more professional than we just had like a little quick add on to the side of our website. But we had some news coverage reach out to us, and we realized that families that weren't kind of our closest families would start using that. And we wanted to kind of professionalize that a little bit, make it so that parents would register their kids. So it was like kind of a clear line of communication that if something was going wrong, we had parent contact information and we could reach out to folks in that way. And that we're treating it like signing up for summer camp, in that when you register your family, you'll get a call from our camp director, Clee, who will call the mom or the dad, whoever registered, tends to be moms for us, and say, hey, what's going on? Like, this is what's going on, and kind of onboard. We do that with all of our camper families. So it's the same process. Clee didn't have to learn anything new. And to do that, we put everything on hold. So we're not really processing any new, we haven't had any anyway, but we're not reaching out to new families to recruit. We're not running any marketing. All we're doing right now is planning for the summer. So staff interviews and things like that, and hometown stomping ground. No other reach outs or marketing, which is what Clee normally does for a lot of her day.
So you told Clee, pause everything planning for summer 2020, pour all your energy, so 40 plus hours a week, into hometown stomping ground with your camp director.
Give or take. We're not doing any program development or anything like that. We're doing the mandatory things that we know we would need to do to be able to run camp. So there's some health department paperwork and that kind of thing, so that we could run camp, but we're not trying to make 2020 regular in-person camp better at the moment. We would run it as it has been, kind of.
Yeah, and there's so many things I love about hometown stomping ground, but it's kind of like, I'm in these like parent groups or whatnot, education groups on Facebook, and there's so much content out there of like fun videos, or like Mo Williams reading Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. Like, I can't compete with that. Like, that's awesome. And I'm not a great video editor. So if we think about it from a differentiation standpoint, what does Stomping Ground have that, Macmillan Children's Publishing doesn't have, or, the school system doesn't have? It has these kind of quirky counselors who can build relationships with kids, or teach them about, all sorts of things that they can't just like download a worksheet on, but build connections with them or maintain those connections. And then Jack said we built a quick website, which is like a hilarious Jackism to say. Most of us wouldn't just like build a quick website. But this is another really interesting thing that I think Stomping Ground has done, which is thinking about the strengths of the leadership team. Like, Jack is really good at building websites. Go for it, do it. Like, that's a strengths-based approach to this situation. So what is your camp best at? What tools or skills do you have that can translate here that also are kind of fun for you? Like, Jack kind of likes building websites, right? So how do you make this something that gives you life, and you're not trying to learn how to become a video editor overnight? And so I like those things about what Stomping Ground's doing. Jason, why don't you talk a little bit about what Kataki's been up to?
Yeah, so Jack has highlighted that we had some different decisions that we have made, and this is, I'm putting in the chat, our online hub for Kentucky worldwide. And our decisions have been impacted by a couple of things that are going on. We have not had access or ability to pay any of our part-time staff. So having our summer counselors engage with kids has not been an option for us at this point in time. And that's something that obviously we can offer that's different. And when we really started this, we really started thinking about what can we offer that is different, because immediately there was so much content, and people know how to use Google. You know, they can find how to make a friendship bracelet, and we do have a video of somebody teaching how to make a friendship bracelet. But to us, the really strength that we have is the people that we have and the connection that they have with our families and everything. And so we have tried to bring sort of a camp spirit and share videos of chapels and different messages like that to connect with people in a way that hopefully feels authentic and feels like that we really care what's going on. We have put out some sort of, you know, just limited activity videos. The other thing that we have been kind of uncertain about is being able to promise that we are going to be on a live stream at a certain point in time. I mentioned earlier, you know, our hours as full-time staff have been reduced, and that can change week to week or even moment to moment. So we've been hesitant to get out and just promise, you know, like at this time we're going to be live with this. So we have mainly videos. The other thing that we kind of intentionally talked about is if we're not able to run a summer camp program or able to run a shortened summer camp program, the sort of virtual connection of having kids in the Zoom call, for instance, that might be something we might be holding onto as a content type, as a way to not that it's all about money, but have that be more of a paid version of Kentucky Worldwide, would be that sort of class style where everyone's in the room, which Jack is doing very differently. So.
And Jason, for the content you're creating right now, I see it on Facebook, Instagram. Could you just share what medium that is being broadcast through?
Yeah, so right now we're sort of doing everything is being uploaded to Facebook, and then everything is also being uploaded separately to Vimeo. And through Vimeo, we are building out sort of an online hub that then we are sharing that online hub via email and things like that. So folks that are connected on Facebook are seeing, you know, about 2 posts a day is kind of what we're getting to. And then they can go catch that information from the online hub of Kentucky Worldwide. We've been trying to maintain a brand of that and call it Kentucky Worldwide, and have a, you know, a sign in and a sign off to all of our videos that references that. Have a hashtag of virtual camp and Kentucky Worldwide, so that people can connect with those through the digital means. So.
Well, there's a lot of things I love about Kentucky Worldwide, but one thing that Jason just said that sticks out to me is just like kind of putting some structure around it, so it's a thing. It's not just like amped up, and Jack is doing this too. It's not just amped up posts. It's like, this is Kentucky Worldwide. The other thing I love about Kentucky Worldwide is, I would guess, and I don't have data on this, I don't work at Camp Kentucky, but I guess this is also really engaging alumni as well, and thinking about, you know, campers obviously are struggling, staff are struggling, but someone who is an alum probably also could use that like bright spot of like a really, you know, lovely song with Jason that they know from their time at Kentucky 10, 20, 30 years ago, and that could feel really good to us. So I like how the stuff that you're producing probably has a greater reach than just like current families. I think that's really
yeah,
an important
actually,
service.
One of the quote unquote most popular videos we didn't even actually go out on the main Camp Kentucky Facebook page. It was just me down at our campfire site with a message directly to our alumni about, you know, how they are doing and what we're doing at camp and things like that. And that has gotten far more comments and posts and important things. And we actually had people who were like, hey, make this shareable so I can share it to people who are not connected to camp, and which was a really nice feeling. But there's a lot of people who are going through a lot right now. So any light that we can bring, and that's what we're trying to focus on, is the stories and the value and that connection that shares that light versus, you know, here's how to make a friendship bracelet, even though we have that. And I'm not putting that content down. That's good stuff too. But
yeah, I think people are like grappling for that connection and meaning. And when they do have more time, energy, availability, this experience, at least I imagine for myself, like maybe helps people slow down from the rat race and refocus on their priorities. So I think about volunteers, donors. My husband volunteered with like a Habitat for Humanity style nonprofit when he was like 19, 20 years old. In the past 2 weeks, he's been talking about like, we have to get back there. We have to spend some time doing it. And like, he hadn't brought it up for years, but when something kind of shakes you to the core, like this situation, it really does make you think about what's important. So being able to be on people's radar during this time could have huge benefit for them as individuals and for your, organization going forward. Okay, Anna, what have you been up to? How did it start? Who's helping? Tell us.
I've just been feeling.
There she goes. We couldn't hear you at the beginning, but I think
okay. I've been feeling super overwhelmed by this situation, and just the idea of like producing an entire camp curriculum myself online was really daunting to me. And so where we started was I just invited all of my summer staff from last summer to hop on a Zoom call, and I have about 35 summer staff, and I had 30 show up. And we did check-ins for every person. So every person just, how are you? And then that took about 20 minutes or so. And then I asked everyone to just kind of brainstorm ideas of what we could do to help support kids. And the messages that the counselors wanted to come up with was really to share with campers that they're going through this too, and to kind of think about ways that they could be role models for kids who are struggling, and especially some of our teenagers. We have a really strong teenage program at camp. A lot of our kids are 16 and 17, and just thinking about these kids who've had their prom canceled, they're home from school, things are really challenging. So just wanting to be able to step into that mentoring role for them, more so than provide regular online content, if that makes sense. So our counselors have been doing daily Instagram takeovers, which was a little bit of a trust thing for me to let them do that. And some of their content has been a little bit weird. But it's
I love it.
But they're like we have macaroni and cheese pancakes at camp. So they had like one of them made mac and cheese pancakes, and we had two siblings who did a takeover together, and they did like a competition of who could put their friend's camp clothes on the fastest, and then they sang a song for everyone. And it's just been like really authentic, direct content, and I think that that has worked really well. The guidelines that we've used for the Instagram takeovers, that was just a question. I had one counselor get in charge of scheduling everyone. So someone who's out of work right now was like, I would love to schedule everyone. And the night before, she texts them the password. And then the morning of, I text them guidelines so that it's really clear for them. So I text the counselor who I know is doing it. And I tell them no alcohol or drugs anywhere like visible, even if they're of age, like no. I just wanted to name that one for them. I said, stay upbeat, but don't be super, super positive, because this is hard. And the goal is not to pretend it's not hard. The goal is to help kids know how we're handling it, and, work through that with them. And then also to make it, feel free to be themselves, but also recognize that like anyone could see this. And so kind of try to keep that in mind. And I also have been kind of tracking it, and my assistant director has been kind of following to make sure. And so the other thing we're trying to model is everyone following social distancing guidelines. And so like today, we had one of my staff members posted a walk with a friend, and I know that she lives with that person, but she's going to clarify that on the story for everyone so that the teenagers are hearing, hey, yes, I'm out for a walk with this person, and it doesn't look like we're 6 feet apart. That's because we live together. Those are kind of the guidelines we've been using, and that's like the crux of what we're doing. We're also planning a variety show, like a talent show online, and I'm happy to share more about that now or later. What do you think, Kurtz?
Well, tell us a little bit about the variety show.
Sure. So we're going to do one next Thursday, and my thought with like live content is to do quality over quantity, because it's only me and I can't do quantity. And I don't super want counselors zooming in from their homes right now. That is a level that I'm not quite ready to stretch to of trying to supervise that. So I'm going to do a Google form, invite all of our registered families and alums, a Google form where people can sign up, and it's going to go straight to parents' emails. So it won't go to children's emails, although I will, you know, post about it on the Instagram. And my hope with that is that people will be able to work on their acts through the week. So it's a thing to do that relates to camp and is a social thing, but isn't sitting in front of a computer screen necessarily. You know, maybe they're working on a song or anything like that. So yeah, we're going to do it next Thursday, and I'm going to have 2 counselors MC, and I'm going to do the tech side on Zoom. We're going to do a big giant Zoom room and hope that it works. And the counselors or anyone can submit an act, and we'll kind of have a set list, and we'll call on them and keep everyone else muted during it, which is how we do our variety shows at camp. I don't change the password on Instagram very much. I think I changed it twice so far since we started doing this. I'm not super militant about changing it every day, but then I'll definitely change it when we're done.
Okay, so Anna has kind of figured out how to mobilize the staff to generate this content, because content generation takes a lot of time. And I imagine, even though Anna, you kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's happening at Friends Camp, your staff probably know even a little bit better what is going to be funny to the kids or interesting to the kids, and that they're who the kids want to see. I went out to Anna's camp like 2 years ago and trained. And it's been fun for me to follow them on Instagram. Like, oh, look at this is what they're doing, or this is where they live, or those 2 are roommates. Like, you know, that stuff. There's a certain amount of like human interest, and that mysterious curtain of who these people are is lifted. But it does take trust to have them do that. But then I'm thinking from a camp director perspective, if I can't trust my staff member to do an Instagram takeover, should I trust them with a cabin of kids in the summer? No, that's even scarier. So, you know, thinking about the internet is like a wide world of difference than running camp, but it's just maybe a new kind of thing. So the staff members and Jack and Anna's experience are volunteering, if I have it correct. I also want to share that I do think it's important, especially if this stretches on for months and months, which it could, to think about how do we monetize online programs in a way that is generous and compassionate towards people that can't contribute. Obviously, lots of camp directors are getting laid off, furloughed, et cetera. And we have to show that we're not just a money suck, that even if we can't use our regular camp setup, that we can bring in contributions for our organization. So that's something to think about. And I think a lot of our college age counselors are out of work. And so if we can create something that generates some income for them, if we can do a financial model to propose to our boss, or a minimum number of registrations to do this and pay people, I think that's like a huge benefit to these folks that lost their campus jobs or might lose their jobs this summer. So something to think about. But I think a big question mark that folks have is this online safety component. You know, Jason's is maybe a little more straightforward because things are kind of pre-recorded and kind of coming out of Kentucky headquarters. I know you've been thinking about that online safety piece a lot, Jason. So Jack, Anna, Jason, what are best practices that we've been learning about in terms of internet safety, permission, et cetera? How do we not get ourselves into trouble? Again, this is not legal advice. I guess before anyone says anything, set up something, send it to your lawyer or send it to your insurer and have them look over it. Your insurance agent should do that for free. Well, not free, you've paid them, but as part of what you've paid them, it's in their best interest to review stuff like this. So use those professional resources, but to help you get started on what you could pitch to those professional resources as an idea. Anna, Jason, Jack, where do you start?
Well, I wanted to provide a couple other thoughts on this topic because it's very important to me. And we haven't started like, you know, the Zoom room type of content, and this is one of the reasons why, is because we wanted to make sure we knew what we were doing before we got down that road. And I think right now There is a lot of things going on in society that is normalizing the behavior of kids being online with adults, which is not something that has been really normalized before and has always kind of raised an eye about that's weird and that's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. And so we wanted to make sure that nothing that we were doing was starting to normalize anything, so that a tricky person would find it easier to get kids into separate chat rooms or what have you and stuff like that. So Jack and I actually started talking about this, and we are collaborating on a video between Camp Kataki and Camp Stomping Ground that we would be, at least on Kataki's end, asking every kid to watch prior to joining any live classroom style content that we would do through Kataki Worldwide that talks about a couple of points that we think are important, that your parents should be aware and sign up through Kataki. It should come from an official channel. No adult should ever ask you to connect via another medium, or jump, here's my Instagram or whatever it might be, and things like that. So we're working on a video that would, to us, is very important as at least a starting point before we can get there. But Jack, I know you've done more of this style content than I have so far, so things that you want to add on that?
Yeah, we've done very similar. I mean, we're making this video with you, and by we, I mean actually Nat and Clee are making this video, and Jason and I were in on the first meeting. And hopefully it'll be out next week because they're moving pretty quickly. So we'll send that out to everybody when it's done, and you can either use it or just directly copy the script and make your own. Anything that we do at Stomping Ground, if it's useful for you to make your lives easier, you can take, copy and paste, whatever you need. Just take it, make the lives of your kids better. I don't think we're competing, and if we are someday, I don't know. I'll do something else, I guess. So steal it all. It's not stealing, it's using. So what our initial group of people who have started doing hometown stomping ground have all been current families, and so Clee has reached out to all of the parents individually of the kids who have signed on, and made sure that they were aware of what was going on, and that if they had any questions to go directly to us. We've also, I'm really excited about this video. I think it'll clear some things up, and it's directed toward kids specifically, the video, so kids can watch it and kind of know a little bit more how to keep themselves safe. It certainly is not only the kids' responsibility to keep themselves safe, but it is a responsibility of all of us, including the kids, to keep all of us safe. So the other thing we're doing is making sure we're following what people call the rule of three or truddies or whatever in our online content as well. So we have 2 staff leading all the activities. One of them is one of our year-round staff, and one of them is a seasonal staff member who volunteers, and that person changes for each session. And we do the same for kind of reading all of inbound messages through Instagram DM. Is that Clee mostly handles answering all those, but I just log on once a day and read through everything that's there. And you can see if things have been deleted. So nothing gets deleted, but if it was, you could see that. And that I follow Jason's lead on most of this stuff, because Jason and Nat at Kataki are kind of the people that I think maybe do this the best. And there's no perfect way to do it, but people to look to for sure.
There's some questions about Zoom too. I've been seeing that some folks using Zoom in the camp setting are just turning off the chat altogether. The issue with the chat is if I'm in the chat and I'm a camper and Anna's another camper and I'm bullying her, I can send a message to her without the adults seeing it. And so if you turn off the chat altogether, or only let the panelists, so the adults, if you will, use the chat, then you can kind of subvert that problem. And then if people are bullying each other directly or being inappropriate directly in Zoom, in the big room, you have the adult supervisors there to be able to see it, just as you would if you were all sitting in a circle at camp. So it seems like that's something that folks have been doing to kind of mitigate some of that sneaky side bullying. I also wonder about what is the orientation to parents? What are we communicating to parents? I would love for the parents to watch the video with their children, but in terms of parents registering, I imagine we would need a different type of disclaimer written, or different type of sign off for their kids to do a virtual program versus an in-person program. Oh yeah, and then the Zoom link. So Stomping Ground, if you want to get in on Zoom, you need to use a password to enter into the room. So it's not like someone could just like someone could pop into this room and like be naked or something, and that's really scary. But if there was a password that was only sent to people that registered, it wouldn't work. Oh, Christy has a great tip in the chat too. The host can approve messages coming through or share verbally. So that's cool. Okay, so thoughts about messaging to parents in terms of online safety. Have we gotten there yet, or is that still in the works?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've reached out to parents as the kids have registered for the hometown stomping ground and let them know that this is what's going on, and given them a brief understanding of the timing and when things would be happening. And I think that adding on a video that they'll watch with their kids will take us a long way. And I think this is uncharted territory that we're all stepping into right now, where parents and kids are trying to figure out how to interact in this more digital world. I think that our parents, the kids that have been coming to our sessions, are Stomping Ground kids right now. Mostly, there's been a couple of other people who have joined, and our parents tend to be pretty anti screen time for their kids, and so they're trying to figure out, they're overly zealous around getting kids off of screens or not letting them spend too much time on screens. So it's interesting to talk with our parents who are having their kids on Zoom with us, but who normally wouldn't have their kids on screens. And I think that's like both sad and great. I'm not as anti-screen as many people might be, but I do think that, there is a reasonable amount of screen time. And my guess is most parents are saying that the reasonable amount of screen time that kids are having during this quarantine is larger than the reasonable amount of screen time in a non-quarantine time, because it can be some of the only ways that kids can interact with other people, that they can kind of see what the outside world is like. Because a lot of our families are from New York City, where kids don't have a yard to hang out in, or I know a lot of Anna's kids come from Boston. New York City and Boston are in heavy lockdown right now. So yeah, I think that this is something that parents are navigating, that we're navigating, and it's really important, like Jason said, to make sure that kids and parents are aware of the risks involved. Most of our parents are very aware of it. It's something that they bring up to us, and most of our kids aren't sure yet how to navigate that world. And it's an interesting and kind of awesome opportunity for us to help them be more aware of what is safe and how to keep themselves safe, I think.
So, and one thing I saw that Stomping Ground is doing next week is Laura's having a caregiver check-in on Zoom. So it's a meeting of parents on Zoom. Oh my gosh, I so need that right now. That's so awesome. So thinking about what are other ways that we can use this platform. And I think screen time should be defined more specifically. There's passive screen time, like I'm sitting binging a show. There's maybe active screen time, and in my day it would have been like playing Math Blaster, or maybe Speak and Teach is typing or something, right? Or educational screen time. And then there's social screen time, right, where we're engaging with someone. I have a toddler right now, and we've been doing a lot of FaceTime which seems wrong because now I have an iPad that's designated just for her. It seems nuts, but it's like the only way she can talk to my parents right now, and I don't count it as screen time. So thinking about screen time as a blanket statement isn't specific enough. So how could we help define that for parents? And so I also want to talk about this online programming piece of how do we make online programming super engaging and interactive for kids? How do we move it from that kind of passive screen time piece to community building or connection making, something that feels a little bit more like camp and less like, you know, just going to the movies and being entertained. So Anna, Jason, Jack, what are your takes on that question?
I've got a thought that's a fresh thought, but I'd love to share what we're thinking about with the potential for programming over the summer. If we do run camp, I don't think we'll do this alternative plan, but if we don't run camp, we're thinking about doing small group, basically like check-in groups throughout the course of the summer. So they could sign up, not just like to come, they wouldn't really sign up for week 1 of camp because their lives are just going to be different, but they could sign up to be part of a cabin. And that cabin would meet in small groups with 1 or 2 staff members, ideally 2 counselors and me or something. And they could sign up and they would do some silly bonding activities and some, you know, more thoughtful, how are you doing reflection type activities, but it could be organized by age group and it would allow that development of relationships over time. And it could include things like, you know, even being like making friendship bracelets for everyone else in the group and sending them, or being letter buddies and building on connections that are already there, but having regular check-ins. And we do think that that's something that could potentially be monetized as like an optional thing. We could offer it to families and have a, you know, pay as led is something. I run a Quaker camp and that's a term we like to use, you know, to make that happen. And I'm excited to see how that idea might develop over time.
That's like also an interesting idea if camp does run in a traditional way. I mean, there's some sort of surprise about coming to camp and meeting people for the first time, but our summer camp society model is that we meet online for several weeks, and then when we get to the conference, we already have this like base of knowledge. And so I call it camp. Our summer camp society conference is like a camp. It ramps up so quickly because you already know people. And so I love that as an experiment too, even if camp does run, if you're meeting online with a small group for several weeks and then you arrive in the same cabin together, could that amplify the camp experience even more because you have this foundation already built, especially if we have to do something like run shortened sessions compared to what we're used to. Maybe you usually run 2 weeks, now you're just running 1 week of camp. Could we eliminate some of that ramp up time by doing some online programming too? So like some combination of that could be really useful no matter what the outcome of our situation is. Jason?
So there's the interaction engagement piece is something we've been talking a lot about because we have a disparity in our camper population as far as what they have available to them. We talked about, you know, access to the outdoors and people's locations and homes might be very different. And so one thing, you know, we keep thinking about is, oh, what if we taught them how to do this? Well, we can't actually guarantee that they have XYZ at their house in order to do this, that, or the other. And I have seen some people share some ideas about sort of like a subscription box sort of thing. And I wonder if you could marry that idea to, you know, the Zoom call content, classroom style meeting where each week you mail out XYZ and then you meet with your class and you go and you have it happen. And I don't know if that might be a way to do camp over the course of the summer if we can't be physically in the same location.
Jason, I love that idea, and I think that we are in a similar situation where we're going to run some kind of online camp for as long as we're stuck in quarantine. And if that goes through the summer, we will hopefully level up. And Ruby posted in the Travis Go Camp Pro Slack COVID. I don't know what it is, but it's great. If you're not a part of it, I'm sure we can find a link.
I'll put a link in the chat.
And she posted about, freemium business models. And I love the idea of figuring out ways to have some of it be free or charge for some of it. And, our camp is very like based on like trying to pay what you can model with families. So, we would, I'm sure, figure out how to fund scholarships or whatever needed to happen in those kind of ways. But yeah, is it that we send people what they need to have camp? Do we do these small groups? Our week-long options, we run daily and then kind of week-long options right now. Our week-long options are more popular than our day-long option or our daily options at the moment. So, I think that there is a want for deeper programming, deeper connection than just, jump on and do this kind of thing. So how can we level that up? And as we're all nonprofit camps, I do think that there are donors who would be interested. It's hard right now. Fundraising is harder than it was a month ago, I think, because a lot of people have less funds than they started, but there's still people with money. And we've already, we canceled our Rochester fundraising committee meetings. And because of Hometown Stomping Ground, one of the committee members called an impromptu meeting for that committee without asking for our permission. Of course, we came and kind of said, this is a time more than ever that Stomping Ground needs help. How can we do better? So I think that there are people that still have funds, even if all of us are in this, like, is there going to be money mindset? Not everyone is like that, even if many, many, many people are.
We had a brainstorm meeting with some Summer Camp Society members about a week and a half ago. And it is like a really hard challenge to like move our mind away from things or like needing supplies and whatnot. How do we run online camps with very little overhead or very little hours needed? One idea that Mel Kolakowski shared was to create like an activity would be for everyone to do one of those like scene pictures where something like 10 things change in the scene. So like I love the idea of having an hour and a half of digital camp and then having a project or an assignment or something that the kids can do overnight. So her idea was have each kid take 2 pictures of a scene. So in the first picture, it is as it is, and then they change, spot the difference, thank you, Milk. And then they change 10 things around, and then they can share the 2 pictures with the facilitator via email or what have you, and then all the kids can play the spot the difference game together digitally the next day. So I love that. And so thinking about what are other things like that we could do? Could we assign all the kids the same movie to watch that night? Or, over the first 3 days, watch this movie, and then on Thursday, we're going to talk about it together. I think that helping parents with engaging their kids in childcare is an incredible service to them. And so if we're talking about money, we're talking about short term, how do we keep afloat? How do we keep things going? How do we reduce expenses? How do we pay our wonderful staff so they can eat and stay afloat? And we're thinking long term, if you as a camp can bail out a couple or 10 or 100 parents right now who are trying to work from home, who are trying to engage their kids, who are worried about atrophy socially of the mind, et cetera, things will improve, things will get better eventually, and they will be hardcore fans for life. And I think that is like a very worthy, place to put your effort. Even though it's hard when we're all still supposed to be planning for the summer as usual. So prioritizing that is just like mind-blowing.
Kurtz, I love that. And I think that Jason and I talked about this yesterday as we were making our plan for the video that we're making. But right now we're in this mindset, as Stomping Ground is too, of like, how do we figure this out? We don't know what's going, how is what, and I think that when we do get like a tiny break, that I think we're at Stomping Ground, we're hitting that tiny break where we're finding routine in what we're in this new normal, sort of, and we're not done yet, is what superpowers does the internet have that can help us accomplish our mission that's different from in-person programming? And that's where we're hoping to go. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. One part of it is obviously that it's across distance, but there's other things that I think we're going to learn that are better about virtual programming. And I don't mean that they're going to ever be better than in-person camp the way I love in-person camp, because certainly right now our virtual camp is way, way, way less awesome. But how do we leverage those awesome parts as opposed to kind of getting stuck doing like half as good at something else? So we can maybe, one way is that it's easier to get parents involved online. One way is that it's easier to give kids like homework that's fun than it is through the rest of the summer. Like, I think one thing that's cool for us is like our teens love the video stuff because they can come together and just like hang out in ways that they are bad at facilitating for themselves, even though they could, right? So I think like I'm excited for a year from now when this is all hopefully mostly behind us, and I've read like 1,000 articles about how it's not actually ever going to be behind us and all those kind of things. But like, it's cool to think about a summer where we run in-person programming and we're doing some virtual stuff more with kids throughout the rest of the year that like ramps up our programming, that now people are a little more used to interacting with the internet in this way. Can we run cool cabin groups all year round? Can we run teen support groups? I don't know what it is, but what can we do that's cool, that is happening all year round in the future? That's what we're testing right now. That's the prototypes that I think we have like a free excuse to make, that people are more willing to interact with now than they ever would be in any other way.
We never would have had to do it if something like this didn't happen, even though it's like such an amazing resource that just was kind of like waiting to be unlocked. And I wouldn't say it's a substitute for camp, but it can be a supplement to camp, right? And that could make camp even better. I read the book that Sheryl Sandberg and Adam Grant wrote called Option B, right? That was the name of the book. Plan B is the contraceptive. I always want to call it Plan B. That's not it. Option B. And it was when Sheryl Sandberg's husband like suddenly died, and they wrote this book about sometimes option A is just not available, and we have to kick butt with option B, right? And so I feel like that's the situation we're in right now, and that type of adversity builds wisdom, knowledge, resources that will make us even better going forward. So
Yeah,
Karen, yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Just kind of building on that, I heard someone say the other day that crisis takes away risk, and this is an opportunity in crisis to just like throw stuff up there and see, because the risk is kind of mitigated as far as no one's going to be saying, well, what if this doesn't work? Well, we don't know what's going to work, so let's just get out there and make it happen.
So I do want to spend the last like 5 or 10 minutes addressing some questions that are coming in the chat as well. So if you have some questions, there's one I think Brian sent to the panelists, and he's going to send it to everybody, but he's asking about monetizing online summer camp other than contributions. I think this is a great time to do tiered pricing. I hate tiered pricing for regular camp. We could talk about that later, but I know it's like super popular in the camp world. Sorry, hot take. But tiered pricing is when you say, you know, this is the actual price. Yeah, and Anna loves it. Ooh, we should have a debate style webinar. You know, so tiered pricing is like, this is the actual cost to run it. I don't know, Anna, can you describe it better? You offer like 3 different price settings plus scholarships. So I think like putting that out there gives people the opportunity to choose. And I think people have noticed that most folks choose the price to run it or higher. And so you actually don't end up losing money. So it's like a more kind of like compassionate way to generate income without excluding folks or making them prove that they're hard off right now or that sort of thing. Other things to add about that question, panelists?
I think that the way we're thinking about it right now is that there would be a bunch of stuff that was free, and then kind of more personalized things like cabin groups or bunk groups or whatever that might cost some kind of money. And with the caveat, like Kurtz, you said, because of the way our camp operates, there would always be some form of just email to let us know if you can't afford it, and we'll make it work. But you know, because the cost of running camp would be lower, the cost of camp would be lower for us. So maybe it's $50 for a week or something like, I don't know. We're playing with a million numbers and trying to do some math here, but yeah, we're in that same boat. Free stuff with customized stuff for more money, the same way that you can do on LinkedIn or other things like that.
I would also just get on the phone and call 5 to 10 parents that you know and trust and say, this is what we're thinking. What does your gut tell you? What would be a fair price for this? What price range would you expect to see for something like this, to help you just get some intel of what people's gut says, and if you can align those numbers. Liza in the chat is asking about online platforms. I'm like Zoom or die. Like that, I wouldn't recommend any other thing except thinking about integrating through social media platforms. I know more people are, I've seen a lot of camps start TikTok accounts or, you know, do more on Instagram. So I wouldn't recommend any other unless y'all would.
Yeah, not from a collaboration standpoint. I was kind of tied to this in the previous question. I did see that Vimeo offers a video on demand option, in which case you would be able to, I think it's a 90% would go to your camp and 10% goes to Vimeo as far as whatever fee you set for the content. So there's a way that you could create paid video on demand sort of content as well, if that's interesting to anyone.
I also think within Zoom, we didn't talk too much about breakout rooms. And Meredith's asking in the chat about a quote that Jason said, which was, instead of asking kids to imagine walking a mile in each other's shoes, let's let them walk for miles laughing, talking, and being friends. So how do we set up those experiences with kids in the digital world is what she's asking. If you have a 3 staff and 12 kids in a group, you can easily do smaller breakouts of 4 people. With 1 counselor or that sort of thing in Zoom, and have these small discussions going. So I think that's important. I think this is where we kind of get into that uncharted territory in terms of online safety, right? And what kids are discussing, et cetera. But I think the more staff you have, the more breakout rooms that you could do on Zoom, and that really helps. So.
There's also some others in my organization who normally do in-person retreats for a bunch of Quaker kids, kind of like, you know, youth group retreats. And they're doing their first virtual retreat this weekend. And it's been really interesting to see the schedule that they've laid out. So they're coming in Friday and they're playing a game Friday night. And then they've got like 3 2-hour Zoom blocks on Saturday. And then 1 hour on Sunday. And normally those kids would be at a Quaker meeting together, like 40 kids in person all weekend, but they're doing it virtually. And they're having check-in groups throughout the weekend of small groups of kids that are going to be in breakout rooms. And I think maybe like a longer intense portion of time might work for that sort of relationship. relationship development. I'll let you guys know how it goes.
That's a cool
That's really
upcharge.
cool.
That would be a cool way to charge for something too. Like that's clearly very different, much more intensive. You could charge $100 for the weekend or whatever the thing is. I love that.
I also was kind of thinking about the fact that when you know, maybe because Jason's quote was about walking, but you are kind of like sitting on your butt when you're in Zoom. Ben Clausen from Lily G. Cook 4-H Camp just sent us, and I posted it in the blog, I'll put it in the chat, like a scavenger hunt that kids can do through Zoom that he tried, and it turned out really well, where kids have to like go through their house and find things or make things and bring it back to the Zoom room for points. And so I wonder, are there other like physical challenges or things that we could do? I know Clee did like a dancing online camp. So these are also really important considerations. Like it's one thing to sit in front of the computer for an hour and a half, but can we do like shared physical activity or something that gets kids moving? Yeah, yoga, but doing it together. So the differentiation point is, how do we make it campy? We make it campy by having those connections between the people, not just instructor showing me how to do this, right? Like that's YouTube. I'm so glad that people are doing the scavenger hunt.
Kurtz, I think something you're saying is that if we are saying that Zoom is the differentiator because it's interactive, then that means that it has to be interactive, right? So like we have to push our staff not to just like lead yoga like they're in the front of the room leading yoga, which maybe leads to like a better yoga. But like what we need is like, we're going to do yoga, then we're going to pause and ask a question, or, you know, let kids come back and talk to us and to each other, or just to us, however people decide. But I think leaning into that, for us, leaning into, we don't care that much about what the activities are that are being done. What we care about is the interaction. And that's, luckily for our clientele, that's true for our camp. We don't have fancy stuff at camp. So our staff are used to coming up with kind of random things to do with limited resources. And our kids are used to doing not the fanciest stuff and just like figuring it out and like having fun. So our parents aren't expecting that we're going to lead the internet version of the rock wall. They're expecting that we're going to lead the internet version of Mafia, which you kind of just can do over Zoom, you know? So like we've been able to lean into that. And I think, I wonder if that is a problem set to solve for camps that have a lot more fancy activities, to make sure that the messaging is around, it's not going to be this, it's going to be this, which we also do at camp. And you might actually not know that you're paying for this because this is the best stuff. And this is just what gets you in the door.
So Bernard is asking a question about engaging members. Can we go a little bit over? Is that all right? Like 5 or 10? Okay. Bernard's asking, have you already talked about engaging members of your community that maybe don't have great computer or internet access? Worried about traditionally underserved camp populations, particularly low income, getting left out of the virtual camp equation. Maybe I'm making a wrong assumption. No solutions for me, but maybe, I'm sure Jack has one. So I think, I guess one thing I'd say to start is following the lead of your school district where kids are pulled from is important. So like in Ann Arbor, which is fairly upper middle class, but also has lots of people from lots of different income levels, the school district has committed to iPads and Chromebooks for students that don't have those at home, and also helping students get internet access because they're delivering virtual classrooms. So if I knew, hey, most of these kids live in Ann Arbor, that helps me. Now Chelsea, which is the small, more rural school district, kind of to the west of us, internet doesn't really go out there that easily, and a lot of people don't have internet. And so those students are picking up packets from school through the window of their car and doing large packets of worksheets and stuff at home. And so Bernard, I think you pose a really important question, and thinking about how do we get that data, or if we do know we have a segment of our population that doesn't have internet access, what can we provide to them via regular mail. I mean, even getting like a bunch of letters and worksheets, like fun worksheets from camp in the mail could feel really special, right? And so maybe it's not the best solution, but maybe it's something in between. So yeah, like postcard story game, or send an envelope, a self-addressed stamped envelope in there. If you mail this completed packet back to me, I'll send you a camp t-shirt. So fun, right? Like stuff like that. What other ideas or insights do you have on that, guys?
Well, I was wondering if it, I think of what other businesses and what stories they can tell during this time, and I wonder if if there's a local phone or internet service provider that if you could approach and say, hey, I've got these kids that need help with this. Can you provide that? And then we have a story about you providing summer camp. Here's what we're doing for summer camp. We want to make sure it gets to everybody. Can you help us provide it for everybody, for these families? And then they have a story of, we stepped up and we gave these families internet and blah, blah, blah.
One other thing that we're trying to keep in mind is that some families might have internet and devices, but they might not have one device per child. And so working on ways that families can participate as a whole, or that kids could do something together on the same screen, and then providing them things that are, like we're doing a TikTok challenge. One of the counselors who did a takeover made a Friends Camp TikTok challenge dance, which I don't really understand, but it's like something that they would work on kind of offline and could work on in groups. And so thinking about not one person per device, but trying to be flexible about that mindset for families who might not have one device per person.
And Zoom, you can use on an app, on a tablet, or on a phone. So if a family doesn't have a laptop, but they can hook up on a phone through Wi-Fi or that sort of thing, Zoom is compatible, which could be helpful.
Yeah, but probably half of our kids are coming to things on phones or iPads as opposed to computers, somewhere in there. And maybe a third are coming as doubles or triples in a screen. So lots of kids are coming with their siblings. Bernard, I think your question is a good one, and one that Laura has been really, really, really trying to think about for us around having access to camp, virtual camp. I think I love Jason's idea of trying to partner with a larger organization in Rochester, where we're headquartered and where a disproportionate number of our underserved kids come from, because we have more connections with partnership organizations there than in other places. So we serve more kids who are living in poverty in Rochester than other places. The Spectrum has given free Wi-Fi to any student. I don't know if that's everywhere. It's not real. I mean, they've given it to every student. It's just not everyone has been able to make it work because it's not easy to do. So I'm not resting on my laurels like, well, Spectrum said it was going to happen, like just like they said they'd be here at 4 p.m. So I don't think that totally works. I will say that the problem isn't so much that they can't log on through a phone or something like that, but that Zoom takes a lot of data if you do like an hour of a conversation. So if they don't have they don't have unlimited data, all those things we're trying to figure out. I think that those are actually not the biggest hurdles for our families. They don't tend to be. Most of our families are people, because they found their way to camp, are a little bit able to figure that kind of stuff out in most ways. That means for me that I haven't done a good enough job reaching everyone that in the world that could come to camp. Now that hasn't. That's okay. I get that. But then on top of that, I think the real problem for us is that our parents who are living in poverty don't have the same open rates for our communications as folks who have more financial means. And so though the kids never know that they could log on. And so that is one of the problems that we're trying to figure out. How do we make that communication better? Because that is our bigger, I think, from the small sample size that we've been able to kind of reach, that's a bigger hurdle for us, is how do we get the parents to tell the kids that this is an option, as opposed to how do we fix the internet. One, because fixing the internet is a much bigger problem in terms of how to solve it, and two, because I think it's not as many kids that don't have internet as who just don't know about what's going on.
I also just wonder about, like, you have some counselors that want to volunteer. Like, can they have a list of 20 families just to call and say, like, hey, this is, Jack and Jason from Camp So-and-so. How are y'all doing? We wanted to check in. We're bored. Like, we miss you. And just, like, some of those things that have some structure around them but aren't a program, I think could be super meaningful. So in the last, like, couple of minutes here, let's all give kind of like a final thought. And I have one that I want to share, which is, I've been involved with the Center for Positive Organizations at University of Michigan for several years, and I'll put it in the chat. They have, like, a whole resource about enabling people and organizations in trying times. And one of the things that they put on this resource website was that it's important that we focus on our higher purpose during this situation by answering this question. So the question is, what can we as an organization offer to the greater community right now in the midst of the crisis? Or what can I, as an individual, offer to the greater community right now in the midst of this crisis? And if all you can offer is staying inside and not spreading germs, that's great. And if all you can offer is sharing your commercial kitchen, so food can be made for kids that aren't getting lunch, that's great. Or if it's something bigger and better than that, that's great. But if we can, like, keep that question on the forefront of our minds, I think it'll help us make decisions and see the bigger picture, as opposed to kind of getting lost in these sad and real thoughts about everything changing really suddenly that we've been working for. So yeah, so Anna, Jason, Jack, any kind of final things that we didn't cover or parting thought for our...
I've got one parting thought, and then I need to hop off and run to another meeting. But thanks, everybody. The thing that someone said on a Zoom call that I was on the other day was just thinking about that moment that we all do get to hug each other again. We're big huggers at Friends Camp. And like really letting that moment of, like, when camp it might not be this summer, and things will be different. Like, I've been reading those same articles, Jack, things are going to be different, but, like, there will be those moments again. There will be the hello, and it will be the campfire, and like really taking a moment to, like, be mindful about that and think about those moments has been really helping me, and I think helps our staff and helps our campers, and not just silly distraction, but, like, hope and knowing that it will be true once again. So I've been trying to post that kind of Instagram content for our campers. Thanks, everybody. I gotta hop off.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Anna.
I have to go before Jason because Anna was just inspirational, and then I know Jason's probably going to be inspirational, so I have to, like, slide in with, like, super tactical. We haven't talked a lot. The sun moved dramatically in my situation here. We haven't talked a lot about kind of supporting our staff through this, and so I just want to say one thing that we're trying, and I don't know how it's going to work, and you probably all have better ideas, so please share them. But next Monday, I think, we've invited all staff alumni to a little thing, say, just to check in and those kind of things. Laura's going to lead something that she leads normally at camp, like a gratitude circle kind of style. And then we're going to invite them to, and I don't remember the name of what Laura's calling them, but, like, kind of staff support groups. And there's a term in Laura's there's a term that is smarter than that, and I apologize that I haven't.
No, the suspense. Did he freeze, Jason?
Yeah, he froze for me. We lost him.
Oh, Jack. All right. Well, this means that we're gonna have to make Jack write a blog about it because he froze. That's his punishment. But I love that, thinking about, can we create these small camp communities for our staff? I think is where he's going with that. How do we do that virtually?
Yeah.
All right, Jason, you get the last word.
All right. My last word is right now there is no playbook, there is no script, which means that whatever you're doing, it's not wrong. It's the right choice for your camp and your population. And keep making those choices and do the next right thing, whatever that is. There's always going to be something that you can see next that you think this is the next right thing, even if what's way down the road is scary and we don't know what that looks like. Find the next right thing for right now, for this moment, for Friday afternoon, for Saturday, whatever it happens to be, and keep moving forward. I've said some things about what works for my camp. Jack said some things about what works for his, and in your camp, you can do this, we can do it. Camp is going to be back and it's going to be stronger than ever.
Cool. Well, Jason, thank you so much. We should have a recording of this that we'll send out to everybody. And I put my email in the chat. It's Kurtz at thesummercampsociety.com. I'd love to hear more from all of you about how we can help, what resources you're looking for, how we can kind of combine forces to get through these times. So we had 216 people register today. I think about 135 viewing live. So hopefully other folks will get to experience this on the recording. And we'd love to hear from you because we want to know how we can be most helpful. And we just appreciate all of you trying to, help your kids through these times and keep your camp afloat. So yeah, you're not alone. So thank you. All right, signing off.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
next time.
Best of luck.